this was a blanket. And I cut it in half. And I ripped it in half. There's more. No, or did I cut it? I think I ripped it. And then I sealed it with some string. And the idea was to use it like a poncho. So now I can put it over like this. I'm gonna do this over like that. Et voila! And the idea came to me when I was just a second. This shouldn't be awkward, right? Unless your mind is really dirty, then it might be. I still know how a dirty mind works, so if you're smiling now, you know you got work to do, right? Now it's funny because earlier I had this idea of watching Black Clover. And that's a show that I watched. It's an anime. It's a show that I watched some time ago, but I stopped at some point because the main character was too annoying. Because he was just shouting all the time. As I remember it, right? He was just really annoying. And I think sometimes there's this, right, to have this kind of balance between, you know, being in people's face and being relaxed. Because I always try to be in people's face, and even now, you do realize this is not 100% me. 100% me is a little bit different. But at the moment, I'm making certain choices. You could say I'm holding back. And one of the reasons is certainly what happened with my family. That I just don't feel like being me here anymore, if you get what I mean. Because if I'm me, like really me, weird things happen. To me. People are literally scared of me. And I do nothing. I mean, I've said that already. I barely ever do anything. What I do is I don't talk. What I do is I lock my door. What I do is I have a schedule that nobody understands. What I do is I say things that people don't understand. Right? I say to people, you are afraid, and they say, but I'm not afraid. Why do you act afraid then? Well, I don't. So why do you act like this? Because I want to. Yeah? This is how people generally are. You go to them, you catch them at doing something, and then you confront them with it, and then they say, you know, they usually try to turn it around and push it onto you, and then they say, I'm only doing this because you're weird. Or I'm weird. You know, at least I have more to say than you're weird, right? So sometimes you just realize, crap. For some of the chaos in my life, I'm self-responsible. I mean, most of it actually. And once you realize that the chaos in your life is a result of your choices, you may want to change that. Like, you may want to make conscious choices. And some of these choices are most certainly dietary. At the moment, I'm still with one foot in tea and with one foot in coffee and sugar. And I'm with one foot in ketogenic diet and with one foot in carbs and, you know, everything that gives you fast relief of everything. So like I said, I'm working with transitions. It's a little bit confusing to me because just like yesterday, right, I did eat eggs again just because it's simple. And I fried potatoes, which probably isn't strictly speaking ketogenic, but it's already better than sugar and honey. And then it's like now, right? I'm drinking coffee, but I already have my teacup set up. So I'm transitioning out of this. You could say I'm learning what works, you know, how to transition properly from one phase to the next. So right now I'm transitioning away from all this sugar and stuff, but I'm still eating it, but in a different way. So I've been eating, you know, this kind of sweet kind of milk rice, but without milk. I use coconut milk, coconut cream, and almond milk. It's not milk, it's more like drink. And so it's a transition, right? Because I realized that drinking coffee does have an impact on my life. And at the moment I'm learning still to relax, even though I have drunk coffee. And it's also for me to relax into recording these speeches live, because there are several reasons that make me feel uneasy recording at this point. One reason is the stream is unstable. So I often have the problem that the stream just stops. I don't know, because upload is very bad here or something. Or too many people are using the internet. That's also a reason. I mean, everything is over the internet. People watch these ridiculous HD movies on their 52-inch screens. People watch TV. It's all over the internet. All of it. Now you're living in a household that's being supplied with internet, and you're actually trying to work with internet, and then everybody else uses it for their own pleasure. Yeah, and sometimes, I don't know why, because most people, they actually don't upload, right? Or are they? Are they uploading? Because what do these TVs do, you think? Do you think? Yeah, they surely collect data, my friend. People really are stupid these days. They want to have a TV and then they get a TV and they don't care what happens with their data, how they let themselves be manipulated, how they even feed into it. They just want to serve this system. And this is essentially what my brother said, you know, I'm not like you, I'm not spiritual, you know, I'm just a normal guy. What's a normal guy? There are no normal guys. That's just pushing away responsibility for who you are because you're afraid to show yourself and to step up. Because a lot of men that I've met, they like hiding behind other men. And then you have men that want others to hide behind them. Well, I'm more like the guy, nobody hides behind me. You know, if you're trying to hide behind me, I'm going to step to the side. Here, it's your own show. You cannot stand behind me. I've had this many times where people were piggybacking on me. Now it's like, it's a challenge to drink a coffee where the almond milk did this kind of clogging, right? Where the protein just like shrivels up. I think you call that denaturizing or something. And apparently it's not only due to heat, it's most of all also due to acidity, which coffee has a lot of. Now I'm partly disgusted by this habit, and I'm trying to get rid of it. And one way certainly is getting to the point where it disgusts you to drink it. So I'm just drinking it until I reach the point of no return. And the point of no return is where you hit a spot in your life where you say, it's enough. Right? It's enough. It's enough of being treated a certain way or allowing people to treat me a certain way. It's simply enough. Now this is cold, but it's still better than this. Tea is much more gentle. Much more gentle. And it also doesn't create this disgusting taste in your mouth. This vile bleh. So anyway, you know, I was stuck at people are actually afraid of me. Well, because they can sense it. They sense truth when they see it. And it's very weird to speak about truth in general, because most people don't actually know what it is anymore, but they can feel it when it's staring them in the face. And somebody who has spent a lot of time in nature certainly got a little closer to the truth than somebody who's just staying in this kind of society. Because this place does not tell me who I am. What tells me who I am was when I was back in nature. And so when I'm talking about diet and depression, we also have to understand a little bit of where depression comes from. And depression is like a low point, right? So where does your depression come from? Well, your depression comes from the feeling of probably separatedness and the feeling that you're not appreciated for who you are. Well, what helped me a lot was to realize that when I'm in nature, nature appreciates me a lot for who I am. And then you can think about, okay, but what foods does nature provide for me specifically? And what is a natural diet? Like more natural than what we're eating today. And a natural diet is basically, or more natural, is already something that has been made with hands. So if you take something out of a plastic bag that's already done, or like a burger from McDonald's, you cannot see what's inside of it. And you don't know who made it and what their intention was. I mean, you know these images of people spitting on burgers. They might do all kinds of other things with your food. And that's just the last step before you're gonna eat it. You don't know what happens along the line. Because we're talking about, this is all energy. And water carries energy. That's been proven by, I don't know, there's this guy, I think he's called Mazumoto or something like this. And that is, but he did experiments freezing water and then looking at the crystals, and he treated the water differently, but not in terms of heating it up or cooling it down or something or smashing it around. No, what he did was he spoke to the water and he realized that the crystals were different when he would say mean words with bad intention, and the crystals again were different when he was speaking to them lovingly. And that's what he found. So he realized water carries information, but more information is a very loose kind of word. But if you say energy, we all know what that means. It's like positive, negative. Of course, the friction between positive and negative creates life. That's the yin and the yang, right? The friction between a man and a woman, it's not this kind of friction, but it's just bringing the energies really close together, also spawns life. It's like the flower that opens, right? And then the seed that goes into it. And now there are certain types of food that open you up, and then there are certain types of food that close you. And when you are closed, then opening up feels very, very weird. I'm saying that for what it is. Because when you are used to being closed and hiding yourself, then stepping out into the open and showing who you are is a very, very difficult process. And that's from my own experience, because you are afraid to step out into the world and say, that's who I am. So if somebody says to me, I'm different than you are, I'm not spiritual, then of course that's already a lie, because everybody is spiritual, because everybody has spirit inside of them. Only some of us like to hide that spirit or drown it with what they eat, with the clothes they wear, right? You can try to hide the fact that there's a spirit inside of you by wearing really tight clothes that draw attention to your body. But you can also wear clothes that give you more space. What does that have to do with spirit? I'm not quite sure. Well, it's about energy flow, right? Tight clothes generally restrict the flow of energy. And wearing plastic, you see, I don't really like it that this is made of plastic. I'd rather have this made of cotton. But that's what I have at the moment, right? It's a different form of heat that I get from this. Like, it's totally different to wear clothes made of plastic, polyester and stuff, than natural fibers. It's very different. Like, the heat is being distributed very differently. It has a different feel. Because if you wear plastic, I don't know how to say that, it disturbs the flow of energy. It's like an insulator or something. It's like we have plastic bags and stuff. Even though it is a kind of a mesh, but it's still, like, this feels different. Now it starts to disgust me, right? So I actually don't want this. Right, I don't want to wear plastic. Cotton is fine. Anyway, so the point is, but on the other hand, so yeah, this is supposed to be about diet. I mean, I'm not kidding. That sometimes, I don't say, I say to you, I've done my homework, and I've done it. I know what to do when I feel like I feel today, right? When I feel like people reaching out to me from the inside, which is possible. Kind of telepathy over, across the globe, or there's no globe to me, but the world, whatever. I can feel it when people are reaching out to me. I can feel cries of help inside of me. And sometimes I wake up and it's like getting a little bit overwhelming. And I'm not sure sometimes if it's me crying for help or somebody else. Because if it's me crying for help, then what is there that I need to do? Because I feel, yesterday, for instance, I had a day and I said, I just want to die, man. I mean, not in the sense of I'm going to kill myself, but sometimes I just want to stop eating until it's over. Because actually, you know what death is? It's not the fact that you just killed yourself. It's the fact that you gave up on life. That you had no resolve to live anymore. If that makes any sense to you. But this is how I often feel. I often get to the point where I say, I'm just gonna stop living now. And then when I get really close to that point, suddenly I say, fuck. No. You see, I don't take sharp objects to hurt myself. The way I say, I want to die is usually it's just a mental thing. You say mental or just mental, but it's very real to me. In these moments, I feel like I really die. What does it mean? You're letting go. That's what it means. Because if you make a conscious choice, just let me die now, then you can be reborn. And so yesterday I had this, and I was just in my room and I hated it, everything. I really hated it. And I still do. I hate my situation. I really hate my situation. But I also have no other way out of this, if you get what I mean. I have no other way out of this. Do you know why? Because there's nothing else. It's like, right now, right, I sit here and I have this blanket. And when I start feeling cold, I either take this blanket or none at all. Because all the other blankets are in the wash. Yeah, I could take this one, but that one's plastic as well, right? So what am I really supposed to do? You know, I just have to accept the way things are. And I often get to this point where I say, I just hate it. I hate it so much. I hate it. I'm just inside. I'm going nuts. But I also don't want to leave this room for long, because the more I leave this room, the later I'm gonna get out of here. Because in this city, there's nothing for me. There's nothing for me. I don't want to leave my energy in this city. I don't want people to see me here. I don't want people to think I'm alive around here. I don't want to go out and meet people because I don't want to meet anyone here. Because I want to leave this place, but with my own strength. And that means I first have to prove to myself that I can do it. So sometimes I get to this point where I really hate my position in life, where I hate being dependent, because that's what I am. You could say you're always dependent, but it's this financial dependence that pisses me off. Because you have to ask people for things. And you have to, right? Other people are in charge of what you're gonna eat because they're buying it. You know, I don't make choices like this at the moment, which makes it really easy for me because all I have to do is I go into the kitchen and I look what is available. But that also restricts me to what is available. Because I also feel like, you know, I don't have any right to say something about this anymore. Because the person who buys the shopping should make the choices. And so at the moment, they're just not asking. And I'm not telling. So it's a kind of a living side by side, if you will. And that takes a lot of practice to be able to communicate on another level. Yeah? It takes a lot of practice to communicate on another level. And you see, this is where the topic opens up a little towards why are we depressed? Because we're trying to communicate with words, but what we're actually all the time doing is we're communicating with emotions. So somebody comes to you and says, "How's the weather?" And you think, what are they talking about the weather for? And then you answer this, and then you're having a conversation about weather. But there's a message underneath this. And it's getting drowned with words. So what would be much more enriching would be to sit together in silence, just in the same room and say nothing. And simply say nothing. That would be a much more enriching experience. To simply sit there and say nothing. And to sit like this for half an hour and just say nothing. That would be a much more enriching experience than to speak about the weather, because that's an escape plan. Because what we really want is to be together in the same room and to feel. And to simply feel whatever wants to be felt. And now, I find this a little bit difficult at the moment, because as soon as I enter the room, And I want to do this with people, they start shitting their pants. Because they don't want to feel, right? They're afraid to feel. Because maybe for me, I'm used to it by now. I'm used to feeling depression. And I also know what to do to get out of it again. Or to help myself, to assist myself with it. Because what depression also really is about allowing yourself to suffer. To look at what caused the depression and then to suffer whatever emotions want to be felt. Because it's about acknowledging the source of the depression, and that means you have to feel the emotions that cause the feeling of depression, the low point, because that's what a depression is, it's a low point. And sometimes we simply have to let go by not eating for a while. You know, what's a while can be a couple of hours, where you simply sit in the depression. You don't turn on the TV, you don't turn on music. You simply sit in silence and feel the shit. I say shit, but... and feel the sadness that wants to be felt. You just sit in the sadness. And then you do like this, or you do crochet maybe. That's a good way. Because what does crochet do? It gives you something. Gives you something to do. To cling to. It's a method, right? So you can crochet through the darkness. And then you still feel all the things, but you just crochet through it. And that is incredibly difficult. In fact, more difficult than you might think. It's much more difficult to do this than to watch a movie. But at one point, you're starting to feel so anxious with watching movies, it's just not enough anymore. So you also realize I need something else. It's like, you know, right now I'm looking for my crochet stuff. So the reason I also look for ways that I can relax partly is because I'm not relaxed, alright? And one reason I'm not relaxed is my diet. Because I eat too much, but I also eat the wrong things. I eat too much sugar. I drink too much coffee. And I'm trying to counterbalance it with eating spices, which helps to a certain degree. But it's also a little bit overpowering. It's also a little bit overpowering. And diet, so this changes something for me now. I feel a little bit different because this pulls me up, right? Because I crochet like this. If you're not used to this, your shoulders suddenly have to work a lot. Which means suddenly your shoulders are being trained to hold the weight of your arms, which will help you to shoulder the responsibility of yourself and your emotions much better. You see how it's all connected. If you're like this, the weight of yourself is too much. So you have to train to be able to hold the weight. And that is a challenge that you may overcome. Yeah, so if the weight gets too much, you either stop fighting or you start. Or sometimes maybe you even just step away from the weight for a little while so that you can go back to it and pick it up again. You know, that's what I often do when I say I stop masturbating for a while, and then the weight gets too much, and then I masturbate again. Because in a sense it is like this. If you are becoming a channel for energy, then you also channel all kinds of things. Like all kinds of things. It's not just about channeling simply energy. What you have to understand is that the more energy you channel, like I'm sitting in a place that's full of shame and a lot of trauma that is being unresolved by people. So if I sit here and I open myself, because I've cleansed myself, energy starts flowing in. Yeah, what kind of energy flows in? You know, that's the first time I think of it like this. Because I often have the feeling it's actually not my depression. Those aren't my emotions that I'm feeling. I'm just channeling them. Because this is the place that I'm in. There is some kind of karma attached to being born into this family. Because I am not of the world, as most people are. I am different. You know, whatever shamans are, but they're kind of aliens. Right? They're being born into the world, but they're not like everybody else. They see different things. They perceive life differently. Time works different for them. They have this, like for them, duality. You know, some people, they just say this is good, this is bad. For me, it's always both. Because, you know, what a shaman does, he goes into the darkness and comes out into the light. And because he does this frequently, it becomes a part of him. You know, he can live in the darkness, but he always sees the light ahead of him. So I can walk through my depression because I know how to get out of it again. And partly how I do that is with food. And I just want to stay with this a little bit longer. The idea of who you are in relation to other people. Because if you think maybe you're a little bit different than everybody else, and when you try to explain to people what you think, they just look at you like, what is he saying? You know, or sometimes they get angry at you. And you just see the root of all their problems, right? Some people have this ability. And then they go to the person and they say, hey, this is your problem. You know, your father did this in your childhood. And that's because you have this kind of behavior. And then they say, that's not true. It's none of your business. You know, it's like you're taking your finger and jamming it right into the wound. A better solution is to simply realize it is so. And to simply see it. Because this is how truth works. You are in the presence of others. And when you hold your awareness and your consciousness, and you pick up all these little things from other people, you actually don't have to point them out. It's already your presence that's pointing it out to them. You know, all I had to do to get my brother to shout at me was to go to his apartment, which was a complete mess, and sit down next to him on the couch and just say 5 words about spirituality, and he completely lost it. And he just kept shouting and kept shouting and kept shouting. He could have said, hey, you know, I don't really want to hear this now. You know, he could have said it in a different way, but he couldn't, so he shouted. Because he's actually really afraid of this. Like, about opening up to spirit. It scares him. Because nobody he thinks is a real person does that. So he prefers to be a liar. Because he's a coward. And that's the difference between him and me. And you and me, probably. Because if you're a coward, you will never understand what I'm trying to tell you. Right? So what I really needed was to find a way to express what I actually wanted to say, so that I would understand what I actually came here to do. Because whenever I try to talk to people, they just shut me down, right? When you go as a child to your parents and you tell them something about them, they just say, oh, how funny, you know, you're just making this up, you're so stupid. Yeah, and so you stop, or you find ways to do it anyway. And I have found ways to do it anyway. And I also realized that if I go around and I point out these things to people, they just get really angry at me. And I also realized I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be always the center of attention so that people can let out their anger on me. I don't think that's my job. Because when people let out their anger on me, what does that mean? They're just using me as an outlet for their insufficient ability to help themselves. So I'm basically their tissue, and they're using me to wank off on me. And I don't want that. Henceforth, hence no comments on my channels, right? And that's basically it, right? It's like, take it or leave it. You know, I'm here just like everybody else. And if you don't like my presence, you'd probably have to force me out of here. You'd probably really have to call the police. Because until I can leave here on my own terms, I'm gonna stay. And some people don't like that, because I'm making life a little bit uncomfortable for them. But I'm also giving them emotional stability in a way, right? But what I'm also doing is, I'm channeling everybody's trauma that I have a connection with. And I have to learn to live with that. And one thing that helps me is diet. So what does it mean to learn to live with that? It means that if I'm here and I've created this space for myself where I feel good to do what I'm doing, and nobody can look at it unless I want them to by opening up an online stream. But nobody else can see what I'm doing in here. They want to, but I just made sure that they can. And so when I sit here and I hear how everybody's like, you know, I hear their little voices that they just think nobody can hear. I feel all their emotions and things. And so what I have to learn basically is simply to sit here and then just to let it flow through me and transform it. It's like washing it clean, right? It goes into me, I work it up, it comes into me dirty and I clean it, or it comes into me dark and heavy. I've never seen it that way. So talking about it certainly also helps me to understand what I'm doing, because only when I talk about it, I understand what I'm actually doing all the time. But if I would go and try to talk to other people about it, they would constantly interrupt me, or they would also want to say something because, you know, everybody wants to have something to say. But most people have actually nothing to say. They just say things. You know, that's simply the way it is. Because I don't say things that I think make me look smart. I simply say things that come to me, and it just falls into place. But the only reason it can't fall into place is because I've been doing this for a while now. So I know how it feels, and I know that if I'm in nature, I feel different. But when I come back here, I feel like this. And now I realize also the responsibility that maybe higher spiritual beings have, that have some kind of shamanic heritage. Or, you know, in X-Men, it's like mutants, right? Everybody else hates them. They all hate me in a certain way. Because in many ways, I can do things they cannot. Right? I can do things, you know, it's not just that I can juggle. It's that I can free my mind of how does it make me look when I juggle, and I just juggle. You know, that's the kind of freedom, right? Some people, they wouldn't juggle. They wouldn't juggle because they think it makes them look like a child. But the fact is actually that not juggling makes them look like a child. Because I don't juggle as long as nobody tells me. So some people, they wouldn't juggle simply because they're afraid they can't do it. And I simply started doing it and I realized, oh wow, I can do it. You know, I can juggle. And that's the same thing with sickness and disease. You know, some people shit their pants if they have a positive test for something. And I wouldn't get tested in the first place because I know how I feel, right? I don't have to have a test to tell me how I feel. Right? If I feel afraid, I don't go to a doctor and let them test me. I simply sit with the fear and try to figure out what its root is. And this is where you have people like, people who always find some kind of sickness, right? Oh, I have this, I have this, I have this. While in Eastern medicine, they say never name, you know, your disease. Never give a name to it. Because that brings you further away from the truth. Because the truth is that your disease is probably fear. Your sickness is probably fear. And you're creating the symptoms by the way you live. And partly by the way you eat. So, if you want to hold in your energy more. So one reason I drink coffee is probably I'm trying to get rid of things. Yeah, one reason people masturbate, including me, is because I'm trying to get rid of things. And the reason I'm trying to get rid of things is because, let's say I'm sitting in a German home with people that have a German heritage, which has a lot of shame connected to it. Shame in terms of ancestral stuff, Nazis, Jews, whatever. And that's just the top of the iceberg, right? It's just the tip. There's a lot more. You know, also small scale, you know, father-child relationship. It's not just, you know, we as Germans, it's also specifically this family. So all the shame is like, boom, it's part of this family. Which means when I sit here and I start feeling ashamed, it's like rising up. And I start identifying with it, then I feel ashamed, and then I am ashamed, you know, I am. So it started with I am, and then I started identifying with something, and then I said I am ashamed. So it starts with I am, that's just I am. No identification with anything, it's just I am. I am what I feel, right? But not really. You know, I'm somewhere in the middle of that. And then I start identifying and getting attached to these feelings. And then I want to hold them on. It's like, oh, this feeling, oh yeah, ooh, shame. And then you say, I am ashamed. And then you say, I am afraid. Whereas I say, you know, I acknowledge the fact that fear exists. So I try to distance myself a little from these emotions. I sometimes allow myself to get close to them, but what I still have the problem is that when shame rises in me, I cling to it because I think it's my shame. But it isn't. It only is if it's like my precious. It's my precious. You know, Gollum could have said, to me it's enough to know that the precious exists, and whoever has it, you know, have a blast with it. But he said, no, it's my precious. Yeah. So he could have taken a more like distanced approach to the precious, simply saying, oh, the precious exists, and that's so nice. So whoever wants to have the precious, you know, go for it, because I keep the precious in my heart. And that's the problem that I also seem to have in terms of relationships. That, you know, when I fall in love with a woman, you know, it's actually fall in love. It's already a bit weird, but in a sense it isn't. Because I can be in love on my own, right? It seems easier to be in love with two people, but how long can you maintain that? It's much easier to simply be in love with yourself. I mean, not with yourself in terms of, oh, I love myself, but to just be in love, which means you can sit here and just be love, right? I am that. I am that love. So yeah, you also get this point, you know, people, sometimes they look into my online stream and then they run away again. Because to them it's not safe at the moment. Because there's not enough people liking this. You know, if there would be already 500 people watching this, people would say, oh, now it's safe to listen to him, because, yeah, now at least, you know, maybe he's not that insane. It's like, what? You know, people always need the crowd to back up what they think is nice. You know, if other people don't like it, you know, so people feel safe in liking Jenna Ortega. But who is she? She doesn't exist. She's empty. She is whatever the people want her to be. So now she's this sexy girl. And in 50 years, she's gonna be full of Botox. Probably, right? Unless she says, you know, stop this. Because she has no emotions in that sense. She doesn't show any of them. But inside, she's just being exploited. And so, yeah, stick with family and stuff. So you think I'm talking about diet here, but I'm actually talking about family. And I'm going to say a little bit about diet, but sometimes you just have to get people to listen to what you have to say. Because of course also why people are a little bit slow to listen to this is because they're afraid to admit to themselves that they are actually depressed. Whereas I don't see it as something bad. What I see as more or less bad or self-manipulative is to pretend like you're not depressed while you actually feel depressed, right? So feeling the depression is the first step, acknowledging the depression, but then also instead of going to doctors, you simply help yourself, because my experience with doctors is all they want is to make money. So they're not going to tell you to cleanse, they're not going to tell you to change your diet. They're going to talk to you about stuff, and then they're going to give you some kind of medication that gets rid of the depression or the feeling of the depression. And this is literally what diet can do, right? But I'm just going to hang on. You know, I'm just going to see if you really want to know it. So now you know you're depressed, you can ask yourself, where is it coming from? And what I realized was that, because I was for a couple of years, I was away from home, but I never really left. A part of me always stayed here. And that's this kind of ancestral package that every one of us has when they're being born. And so it's a challenge to learn to channel that and transform it into something loving. And a part of this partly how this is being done is by simply accepting that this is your situation this is how your family is, this is what happened to them. So I know what happened to my family because I talked also to them, right? So I listened to their stories, and then I could make myself an image of what has happened within the family. And people don't generally like to talk about these things, but they have to me, because I listen to them. You know, most of my siblings, they don't really listen to these stories. They just want to tell their own, right? Because they're like, have attention, give me attention. You know, I see this in my brother still, how he looks at my father. It's like, it's sickening to me, because he's supposed to be a grown man, but he's just a little pleaser, right? He's just stuck in this, I'm a child and I look up to others. You know, I don't look up to anyone. If I would look up to something, it's life. Which comes in hand with my disability to die. I really feel like I have that. I really want it, but it just doesn't work. Because I just want to let go. But then every time I do, you know, I come back to this place and it's like, damn it! Still here? Alright. So what do I have to do next? Embrace the situation and learn to simply be relaxed and do your own thing. Don't get drawn into other people's trauma. Simply hold the ground. Do what you do. If you want to sing, sing. If you want to smile, smile. If you want to laugh, laugh. If you want to rap, rap. If you want to make art, make art. And you don't care what other people say around you, right? You don't care if people start shouting at you for doing your art. You simply do your art. Because what you realize is it's their emotions. It's not your emotions, it's theirs. And they're trying to give it to you. They want you to take responsibility for what happened to them. But it doesn't work like this. But in a way it does, because they come to you, they give you the emotion. It's like what my brother did. You know, he shouted at me from the top of his lungs and he pulled me around in his apartment and then he left me lying on the ground. And when it was over, my dad came and also pulled me down like a couple of stairs. And I was still there. Alright, and now? And then everybody blamed me. And everybody said, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. Because that's where they're stuck in. You know, things have happened to them in their life, and so they say, you know, it's everybody else's fault. But what you should do is you should say, but I let it happen. It doesn't matter if you were a child. You agreed to it. Because even as a child, you could have said no. You could have said no. But you didn't. Because you wanted to please everybody. Because you wanted to be loved. Now, I wasn't like this. With me, it was usually like that. When people told me you are wrong the way you are, I just said nothing. You know, I did apologize. For example, in that relationship with my second girlfriend, I did apologize a lot, just she would get off my back, because that's what it was. She was on my back, because things had happened to her with her previous boyfriend. She said he had hit her or something. Well, I actually think this was her childhood trauma. I don't actually think he hit her. I think it was her mother that had things happen to her. You know, but I don't know, right? To me, she was stuck in some place. And so maybe this really did happen to her. Who knows? But she wanted me to take the blame for something. Anything, really. Her headaches. You know, if I didn't close the window at night or open the window and she would wake up, have a headache, it was my fault. Well, she was the one having the headache, right? She should have thought about it beforehand, but then she would say she couldn't. You know, if I would shave my beard off at 12 at night, and then would come to bed a bit later. You know, I would come there to kiss her, and I thought, oh, surprise, I'm really soft now. And then she would get angry at me and say, why did you do that for? You know that I don't like this. You know I can't sleep when you're not here. Yeah, now I know what I could have done. I could have just slept with her. But instead, I felt put off by what she said. And then I left her laying there and being angry. And I just retreated. You know, that's roughly the way it is. So sometimes you just have to make people a little bit angry. To get them to show you what they really feel. Because you actually don't make them angry. You just press on the wound. Yeah? You just press on the wound. Alright. So there's a lot of things to be depressed about. And some of it might come from yourself, but I would say most of it, actually that's not true. I think in the beginning, most of the stuff you're working with is your own stuff. And then you think you're gonna be done. Yeah. You're never gonna be done, mate. Because now it's your time to shine. What does that mean? You have to shine for everybody else. Now you learn to deal with your own depression. Now others will come. You know, what do you think Jesus did? You know, he probably, I mean, the way they say it, he had no, you know, he was just the way he was, and maybe that's true, right? Maybe that's why they say the Virgin Mary, right? Because these things do happen. That children are being received by women that had no sex, that are really like virgins. And there's a sense to this. And why? Because that means the son doesn't have to take up the karma of the father. That's literally what it means. But if you are being born into a family as some kind of being that's somehow connected or feels connected to Christ in the very pure and essential, and like in its essence, you feel like you have a deep connection to life. You know, not just Christ in the sense of that the church wants to talk about it, but to spirit, to oneness, to your ancestors and all of this, right? To the universe, whatever. Yeah, and you've probably been born into this because your father or a man had sex with a woman. And if you are this a little bit weird kid that everybody thinks is always a bit weird and they can't really connect with you, then that's simply because you are not really part of this world. You are not really a part of this world. You know, that's when we talk about avatars, higher beings. You know, shamans, like I said, are like this. They live in a different world. That's why people are afraid of me. Because to them, I'm actually an alien. I am. I'm a different being than most people that I meet. And I know this because I've observed them. And I came to the conclusion that I am indeed different. And I had to live with that because they always want to blame me for everything that happens in their lives. And I have to shoulder it. And so my name is also Christopher. And he's the guy like the Christophorus. So I looked into a bit what my name means. It doesn't mean, right, your name doesn't necessarily have to have a specific meaning, but to me it has. It's the one who carries Christ over the river. And I realized that I can carry other people. All their hopes and their sorrows, you know, give it to me. I can carry that, right? You know, you can punch me in the face. I'm not going to punch back, but I'm going to tell you watch what you're doing next time around. Because I'm taking the hit, but you have to live with the shame of having dealt it. You know, I'm taking being shouted at and dragged across the room, but you have to live with the shame of having done that to somebody else. You know, in the moment you did it, you thought this would make you feel powerful, but now you have to live with the shame of having used somebody else for your pleasure. And that's what porn is about. You're using porn to make yourself feel better because the shame starts to rise and you want to get rid of it. And then it's gone, but it always comes back until you sit with it to resolve it, to feel it. It will always come back. And it will come back for the rest of your life. Because this is how energy flows. The energy needs to come. You can push it back and push it back, but eventually it will always pile up. But you can still use masturbation somehow as a way to transition through it. So if it gets too much and you feel like, wow, this is too much at once, yeah, you can let go. It's possible. I'm doing it like this sometimes. When it's really too much, I just... But I don't want to do that anymore, so I'm working on that. So I have to find ways what to do with all of this energy that starts to rise. And nobody else does that, so I'm doing it because I can. That's the work that I can do. And that's a tough one, because people are going to resist you. And when I feel like people are resisting me, then I sit down on their couch and say 5 words about spirituality, and then they explode into my face. And it's like they just raped me. And then I let them rape me. And then I say, I see why you have done it. Never do that again. But that's just what had to happen. Because as children, I did beat up my brother sometimes. He came to challenge me because maybe he was angry or frustrated, and I fought back, and that was my mistake, to be honest. Because I accepted the challenge. What I should have done was just let him do what he did, let out his anger on me, but I didn't. Because I didn't know I could do that. You know, I just thought I have to fight all the time. But also because I was a child, right? You're kind of vulnerable. You're small, or you think you're small. But that's just something that people, the feeling people give you that you're small, right? Well, actually, you're really big. Like, your soul is the whole world, isn't it? Anyway, so, I mean, you see how this all connects. Depression, why we're depressed, where is depression coming from? There's a lot of reasons, and one reason why people keep being depressed is the way they eat. Because you can literally stay in the depression because you think you deserve it. The way I try to do it is, you know, I eat in a certain way so that I have to do something real quick. Just, you know, just sit there in silence and wait, right? Train your patience. You know, don't pick up your phone. Don't listen to anything. Don't speak. Just sit in silence in front of the camera and just focus on how you feel about waiting. So this is a rice, and the reason I know that I wanted to eat this was because I wasn't eating for a while and I was thinking about what to eat, and this came up. It's a sweet rice with sugar, cinnamon, cloves. I would have put in cardamom, but I don't have enough at the moment, so I'm using that for coffee. A bit of coconut milk or cream, a bit of almond milk. I don't know if you can handle almonds or something, right? So if you have allergies, I don't know. So it's just white rice. And this is something that gives me energy. And interesting enough, I get heartburn from it. And at this stage, I actually have a feeling, because what is heartburn? Is anger. Because what helped me with my heartburn wasn't only the way I ate, it was actually the emotions. Because I have been living with angry girlfriends for a long time, and I had a lot of heartburn during that time. And when I started to channel my energy, so I realized it wasn't the diet only. It was the holding on to the anger and not knowing how to get rid of it. And one thing that helped me was walking barefoot. And now I'm learning other ways. Because nature, when you live in this society, is too far away. Right? Nature is too far away. So I simply cannot rely on nature all the time. It's too far away. So I had to learn now how to ground myself while being inside all the time. Because if I'm inside and I have this deep longing, I want to be outside in nature. Well, there are some people who never leave the house. I mean, what if you would have been imprisoned? So you could say, I just imprisoned myself. Because nobody wanted to put me in prison. Because I wasn't prepared to do really bad things so that people would put me in prison, right? Because I don't really like violence. I might have violent thoughts, but I never acted on them. Sometimes I got close to acting on them. But in the end, they were just thoughts. So, to me, this is what I realized. A lot of the stuff that keeps me depressed has a lot to do with the thoughts that I have. But if I'm not my thoughts, then what does it matter what I think? Unless I listen to it, you may have a thought about watching porn, but you don't have to do it just because you've done it for the last couple of years or decades. Doesn't mean you have to do it again now. Because now you've done it 100 times, you might as well try to not do it the next 100 times and then see how that works. Because if you're getting used to not doing it, then you can make a conscious choice. Now I know how it feels like to give into it. How does it feel like to not give into it? Until the desire goes away. And then you could say, what makes me feel better? Because where also the shame comes in. In order for you to watch porn and masturbate to it, you are willing to let others sacrifice their intimacy. You are willing to accept that other people, like young 20, 19-year-old kids or grown-up women, use porn to make money with it. You're willing to accept that. Because what they want is love. But they don't manage to love enough, right? So they start making porn because their man probably doesn't love the woman enough, or the woman doesn't love the man enough. But ultimately they just don't love themselves enough. And so they want more. And so they use the other person to get that. Like the only reason people make porn, like even the people who hold the camera, how it started originally, didn't have couples filming themselves like that. You would have like a movie team. That's how it started. Yeah, who started that? People who were missing this from their lives and that thought that they can't have it. So they got other people that had the sexy body that they wanted. They got other people acting it out in front of the camera, and then they started making money with this, and then it became a real business. But the first person who started it was somebody who had the desire, but not the courage to get it into their own lives. Because in order to have this kind of tantric, really fulfilled sex life, you have to work a lot to get from down there, which is the root, up to the heart and out into space. So if it means to let go, you let go. But if you let go, then you leave. Because you want to be centered in the heart, which means you ground yourself to what is earthly, which is why we eat. One reason. Just one method of grounding. Eating. This is another method of grounding. Movement, yeah? Meditation. So you can, body, mind, and soul and stuff. It's all one thing. So right now I'm eating the food that came up, because I've sorted out a lot of foods. So I sorted out meat. Sometimes I get almost to the point of eating it, but then I say, nah. That to me has become a real boundary, where I say I just don't want to eat animals anymore. Eggs, alright, for a while at least. Cheese, alright, for a while at least. Because I feel like sometimes my body needs it. I don't know why. But not all the time. So I wait, I eat it, and then I feel satisfied. And then I wait a while. Until I'm again at the point where I really feel like it. So now I haven't made this rice for a while. Because I didn't feel like it. And then I wait until I really feel like it again. And then I eat it. But that takes a lot of practice and patience. Because maybe that's what you want to eat all the time. But what I realized is sometimes it's good to simply not eat it for some time. So in terms of diet, it takes a lot of practice. So you eat things right now at this moment. And the only way to realize how you feel when you eat them is to stop eating them for a while and then to eat it again. A good time to stop eating things is 7 weeks. It's just a big challenge. 7 weeks. So 7 weeks no coffee. 7 weeks no sugar. 7 weeks no meat. 7 weeks no something else, and then you just learn to eat other things in the meantime. So 7 weeks no gluten. And you can accompany that with some kind of detox. It's already detoxing anyway, you know, to drink more tea in that time. You know, not like the, you know, fruit tea is really acidic. Stay away from that. I'm just saying that. Fruit tea is really bad. Really bad. Herbal tea such as sage, maybe chamomile, sage, I find really good. But also green tea I find good. And that may give you stomach cramps in the beginning, but that's just sorting out your stomach from eating too much sugar and for having like really things stuck inside of you, and green tea just gets rid of that. Black tea, a bit similar, but green tea is more relaxing. Sencha maybe, I don't know. Just try to get the powder, like not the powder in bags. Try to get leafy green tea. It's better. And you don't have to be overly concerned about how long you let it sit. Some people, they do tea ceremonies. I'm not really overly concerned. I just let it sit for as long as I want to. Sometimes I just make a batch of green tea, oolong for instance, and then just let it sit for sometimes 12 hours. You know, I don't throw away the first batch because it's stupid. You know, the real reason why people throw away the first batch of tea is in China, right? Because they wanted to show that they can do it. It's a signature of wealth. And so it's useless to me. I just drink the tea, I make it and I drink it. Why would I throw away the first batch? It's stupid. Just to show that you can do it. It's just wasting something. Just because you want to say, oh yeah, I've got the money. Yeah, I don't need to drink this. That's like living on a high horse. And that is generally my concept. So, you know, I cannot tell you everything there is to know about diet. All I can tell you is you should probably sort it out. And it took me years to figure these things out, but that also meant that my body is very specific in terms of what I need. If I tell you all the things that I eat, sure, I can say ketogenic. Try living more ketogenic. But also see if that's really what you need all the time. Because if I'm just only eating ketogenic, maybe sometimes I want to feel a bit more, have a bit more energy, and then I can just sometimes eat sugar. But the problem with sugar is that I'm facing is that it gives me energy, and if I don't eat sugar, I feel tired and weak. Because I'm relying on the sugar to make me feel a certain way, and that is then also partly also the root of my depression. That if I don't add something from the outside, then I feel tired and weak. A better way would be to simply accept that I feel tired and weak now, and then work through that by strengthening my body anyway. And that would strengthen my will and my mind and my body, so that I can know, even when I feel depressed, I can still hold my own weight. You know, nothing can push me down then anymore. But as I work with transitions, because I also want to sit here and speak at the moment, and I want to give my audience the feeling that it's really easy to do this, but at the moment I also realize maybe I need this kind of food. And so I set myself a goal that from the 28th to the 5th, I'm going to fast for 1 week, and it's going to stop at the full moon. And so I'm waiting for that time to come. And until then, I'm just going to hang on as best as I can and keep producing the content that I feel like, because at the moment I don't have much to give, to be honest. I don't have much to give. Yeah, I don't have that much to give. I don't know why. I think what I'm doing at the moment is channeling. And it's very hard to do that, because now you have to realize what this family did to me. They all together produced a lot of shame in itself. They all feel bad for it. All of them. They all feel bad for it. And so I'm the one that has to keep up the mood, right? Because if I would judge them for it, and then I leave my room and I give them the feeling I hate you all, I would keep them trapped in the shame. Because I think, you know, I'm like self-righteous now, right? I'm like, I'm the victim, you all did this to me. But the truth is, I let them do it. I could have intervened. I could have left at any point. You know, I could have punched someone, and then they could have really blamed me, but now they know that he did actually do nothing. And we just had to go at him. Yeah. And right, they just took the first opportunity where they sensed some weakness in me, or what they mistook for weakness, right? But it was actually my strength. So they just like bounced off of me. But I still had to deal with it. And that's the really hard part. To not get sucked into this, I'm in the right, I'm much better than all of you. To just say, oh yeah, you play your little games, you know, I don't really care. But it does hurt me. You know, it does hurt me. It does hurt if somebody does this to you. But I'm not going to show that. You know, I'm not going to be weak if I'm strong, right? Because I'm stronger than any of this. Like, you don't break me that easily, otherwise I would have killed myself already. I think what they had to understand is that there's a consequence if you let out your emotions, your frustration and your anger on another being. Then holds a lot of consequences, which means you will feel ashamed, and that will probably be either self-directed or at the other person, if that person allows it. Well, they know by now that I don't allow this, that people put me into the position of being the one who caused it, because I'm not the one who shouted me. I'm just the one that sat down to help, and that's the help you wanted. So you shouted at me and you got rid of your anger. Now you have to deal with the frustration of having done that, and the feeling of shame, how it actually feels like to really shout at someone. You may think it feels good in the moment, but afterwards, you know, shame is already waiting for you. Oh, my friend, you just shouted at someone to make yourself feel better? How does that feel? And that's the same thing we do with porn. I mean, what I see on the internet, I still sometimes check out porn websites. Because, yeah, it's hard to get rid of it, but I'm working on that. That's all I can say. I'm working on it. It's time to let it go. Yes, absolutely. But what I see then is, you know, there's people that do like a Jenna Ortega tribute where they masturbate onto images from her. That's the kind of shit she has to deal with because she allowed, and her family, but she's self-responsible. So in a way, yeah, she allowed others to use her in such a way. And she doesn't just get love sent, because you have to understand how energy flows. It flows across barriers. If I think of you and I hate you, then I send you hate. That's simply the way it is. And then I feel it. I feel that everybody hates me. And a lot of people hate her subconsciously. They may act like they really love her from the outside, but they really hate her because they want to be her, only they're not. So they're jealous, and jealousy is a form of hate, I would say, or the fear of simply not being enough. A lot of people are really jealous, jealous of a lot of things, and that's why it's really stupid of people to film their sex life, because most people that are going to watch it are simply going to hate you for having this. And you have to take it then. And that's probably going to ruin your relationship. Well, the fact that you started filming yourself already shows that it was already ruined. That the only thing you could do to keep up this kind of sex life was to bring in other people, because the two of you weren't enough for each other. Yeah, so that's the truth. And the truth is that I think I'm done. And there was one person, I think a couple of minutes into the recording, for 48 seconds. That's how much he allowed himself to face what he's afraid to hear. 48 seconds. I mean, I'm telling you, this society is filled with cowards. If you talk about anything else than cars, people start shitting their pants, right? If you talk about emotions, people just run away. That's how they are. If you talk about love, or you show them love, people just run away. That's my experience with a lot of people. And it's really crazy. Like, women are like this, parents are like this, brothers, sisters, everybody. As soon as you show them a little love, they just shit their pants and run away. And I happen to have the standpoint of just tackling it head on and just going into it. And then you realize that love is not only feeling happiness, it's the ability to love no matter what. And not in the sense of, oh, I love you, but more like, yeah, that's how it is, man. You know, that's life. It's this kind of, how would you describe this? Yeah, it's just a state of acceptance. In German, you have this word abgeklärt. You know, you see it for what it is. You know, so I don't go out to party anymore because I realize that going out to party is simply an escape from how people feel when they're alone. It's simply an escape. You know, to have the feeling, oh yeah, everything's alright, but nothing is alright. I mean, we're hacking the planet to bits. I mean, and to me, the planet does not mean that it's round, it just means, you know, it's whatever this is. I don't know what this is, but it's something. And we're living in it or on it, I don't know what. But I don't care whether it's round or flat. I really think it's not round. I think, to me, consciousness is kind of flat, right? We're talking about planes of consciousness. So you may think there's like mountains and stuff. But to me, the way it feels like, yeah, I don't even know, like, does Peru exist right now? Sure, when I look it up, it exists, but does it exist right now? When I fly there, it exists, but does it exist right now? I don't know. Maybe it exists to the people that are there. And maybe that's just the way they imagine life. You know, that's how I see the world. To me, it's like in that movie, Night Shame Aliens, where they create a simulation, a simulation, a simulation. You know, these aliens that cannot see testicles. It's like, oh, I can't see this. That's what we live in. We live in shame. So we're even ashamed of another man's penis. I mean, just think about it, how ridiculous that is. This is the kind of system we live in where people are ashamed to be naked. Because they are ashamed to be seen for what they are. So they dress themselves in clothes all the time. It's stupid. It's really stupid. Because it's hiding a lot. And it's also, you know, I understand it because if I go out in the park and I take off my shirt when I slackline or I do my work, it's annoying because people are so greedy for naked flesh. Like, what? Like, because most of them hate themselves. And when they see somebody that feels good about being naked or that feels good simply in themselves, then they want something from this. Like, oh yeah. But you cannot have this feeling by looking at it through a screen, right? You have to work for that. And I worked for it a lot. I just figured out, what do I need to eat? What do I need to drink? What do I need to do? What thoughts help me? What thoughts sabotage me? Which practices are for me? Like, do I like photography? Or what do I like? Do I like running? Or do I like more like stretching, yogic practices? Because I realized sometimes running just, I don't know, it's just not really for me. I mean, I like it. I like it to a certain degree. But I also like walking more. I like also alternating. You know, when I go for a hike and I get tired, I run for a bit. So, you know, there's a lot to it. Oh, wow. So right now I just want to learn how to do other things. and to stay put. And that's a challenge in itself. Yeah. All right. Yeah, sometimes I'm just gonna do this. Simply leave and say, take your time, right? Just sit there and wait. And then see what comes up, right? See what comes up. What you want to do right now, or what you feel like doing. Oh, wow. Because you have to figure this out on your own. That's really the only way that works. You have to figure out what you came here to do and what you can do, and then you simply do it. So you also have to look at what is available to you. Which skills do you already have, and how could you use them? So I studied environmental protection, but then I awakened and I realized, or maybe I was already awake, I'm not sure. Maybe I was just waiting till I had enough information to start. Maybe I first had to learn enough skills so that I could then know, oh yeah, okay, now I'm gonna do this. Because if I would have started writing books at the age of 16, I wouldn't have had much to say, would I? But at the age of 30 or 29, suddenly I had something to say. Or maybe 31 or 32, I don't really know. Suddenly I had something to say because I've practiced enough. And that sets me apart from other people, just like to stress that point, that simply read a lot of books and then write a book at 21. But that's all the knowledge of other people. It's still very impressive, of course, but it's nothing new, you get it? There's no new, unique experiences. It's just taking what other people wrote down and then making something else out of it. And that's not really, that's just phony. And that's why, yeah, these things never meant much to me. And so I tried to read these kind of spiritual books. I really tried to read them, but as soon as I did, I thought, well, what's the point? What's the point of reading this if it's already so clear? Like, all I have to do is make my own experiences to feel these things. Because when I read them, that's all there is to it. I want to figure this out on my own. And that's a challenge every day. Every day I think about taking on another job. Because I feel also a little bit ashamed to still live here and not earn money, but that's just worldly desires. It sounds stupid because I still have them, but I also can say, yeah, alright, they're there. And so what? Am I going to be ruled by these worldly desires? I mean, if life wants me to have money, I'll have money. And my fear is, of course, that I'll never have money. Because if you're doing this as long as I'm doing this, and nobody's listening to you, yeah, that's kind of shit, right? But also my father said you can stay here, right? He has no problem with me being here. So I accept it. I say, okay. If you say that, then I'm gonna stop trying to get out of here. Because that's what I've done. I was looking for a fast way out. It just doesn't work. As much as I've tried, it just doesn't work. I've tried reaching out to people and to ask them, hey, can you get me a job somewhere? I've also tried applying to other jobs, and every time I do, I realize that brings me further away from what I want to do. And what's the point of giving up now? Or postponing it? And what's the point? I've done already so much. What's the point of going back now? It would be stupid. Because now I really feel like, things are at least partly taking shape. So if I stop now because I'm still not there, but I'm further, I feel like I'm still in the same place, but the truth is I'm not. It's just that on the outside, it looks like it's the same place, but it isn't. Because the place is growing with me. And you may think that makes no sense, but that's the idea of, if you do your spiritual work and you work yourself out of your depression, you also lift other people out of their depression. And that's what I don't like about Hollywood, because people look to Hollywood like that bright star, but all these people are so deep in shit. They're just pretending with their makeup and their cars and like, oh, ha, 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 their champagne. And we all look there like they're these bright stars, that ray of hope. Well, they're the ones that doing child labor, that exploit children for the industry. And these children are then in the end completely broken, confused, and fucked up. People pleasers. Marionettes. And they're gonna be that for the rest of their lives. And you're gonna have people like Leonardo DiCaprio who sits around like, oh, I'm so cool. Yeah. Give me, let's stretch it out a little, 5 days. Give me 2 weeks with that guy. The problem is, as long as the camera is running, I would know how to do it, even with a camera. I would know how to do it, because the way he works is with instructions. So if you wanted to show who he truly is, you just start filming, and the only thing you tell him is, alright, I'm just gonna film you, and you have to show me what you're doing. He would know what to do. He would just like, wah, 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 wah. He would just talk nonsense. He would just make a clown out of himself. And that's then who he really is. Somebody who really wants attention. His benefit is that in a movie, people tell him exactly where to stand and what to say. And then he can be like, oh yeah, I'm the Revenant. Yeah, but behind the scenes of the Revenant is like hundreds of people that make sure that he's warm, yeah, that he has everything he needs. If he has an injury, he's being brought to the doctor. Yeah, what do you do if you go hiking, maybe barefoot or even with shoes, and you injure yourself and you're alone? What do you do then? Well, you'll figure it out. There's no team. This is how you grow. And that's why these movie stars, they don't grow. Because they're phony. And that's what you have to understand. Also, people that make anime, you do realize the situation in Japan, right? These people are trapped in their homes. Their entire life, they've never been to nature. They've never done anything but being disciplined for school. They only live in cities. And then they start living inside their minds. And then they come up with these stories. And that's why all these stories, most anime that I see, apart from the Ghibli movies, and maybe some others like Children of the Sea, it's a real treasure. But if you look at stuff like Black Clover, or even, One Piece, it's just directed at pleasure. you get people to watch it that are sexually frustrated, and so you show them a lot of wiggly tits. It's just so boring because it has no, it's sacrificing its dignity just for people watching it. When One Piece started, it was really good and really nice, but it just became such a shit show. They could have wrapped it up, but they kind of got greedy for success. Because I get it, it's hard. You create a character that you like and then you want to hang on to it. But look at what it has become. How he looks like these days. Ruffy was a really cool character in the beginning, or Luffy was a really nice character in the beginning. But after a while, he just turned into this really weird thing. Yeah, where he had to become more and more powerful, because otherwise it's getting boring. But the problem I see is that also people like My Hero Academia, these people, they sit in their home, they don't really make a lot of experiences, they just write these novels, and they think about what sounds good, and they draw these characters, but they themselves, they don't make any real experiences. And that's what shows. That's what really shows. You can really see the difference between an anime also like Ghost in the Shell or Akira, and then all these sexually frustrated ones, which just shows where they at. In an anime like Akira or Ghost in the Shell, or also some of the older ones, there was a lot of wisdom in it. A lot of wisdom. Because these people were mature animators that created stories from how they saw the world. And now you have frustrated, angry children that live inside homes that don't really live or make experiences, they just live in the internet, and they don't really grow as people. They don't really get real life experiences anymore. And so they're kind of trapped in their root chakra, because that's why they stay at home. They're just afraid, right? They're just constantly in their comfort zone. And maybe you still grow as an artist, right? Maybe. But the feeling I have with One Piece, for instance, it's just getting worse. Like, it just became more stupid and more stupid the longer the show continued. Like, the characters just had to get bigger. Like, it just became really stupid. Like, how's that cyborg called? Frankie or something? Like, farting as an attack or something? It's like, what? I mean, that just shows something about what this kind of stuff does to you as an artist. You sacrifice your dignity for laughs. And that's something I simply very consciously stay away from, where I say no to this. Because I want to grow out of my, I'm a joke. I want to say I actually take myself serious. Doesn't mean I can't laugh, right? But I also choose the situation when I feel like laughing. Or when I'm surrounded with people who are pretending, I'm not gonna laugh a lot. I'll just laugh to myself on the inside. So, I mean, that's roughly it. Yeah, sure, if you're coming from anime, then what I'm doing is quite scary. Because this is not a way to get away from yourself, which everybody wants to. This is a way to get closer to yourself. And that is scary. And right now, I really want to stay in my room. Because I don't want to give people the opportunity to talk to me. And that means sometimes I'm sacrificing my own needs to be alone. I'm sacrificing my need to eat or something. I'm sacrificing my need to drink something. Sometimes even to go to the toilet. Because I wait until everybody just left. So I learned to avoid people so that I can be alone with myself. You know, I'm literally waiting for people to go out of the way. Sometimes I wait for people to go to bed. Sometimes I wait for people to simply leave the house. And then I do what I want to do. Yeah, so you simply wait for an opportunity. Because when you shine too much, sometimes, with people that are really miserable, they start attacking you. I don't want that anymore. I realize people are agitated, people are angry, people are all kinds of things. I just hold my own space in my room and just keep them all out. Because family is just piggybacking each other. Yeah? They just use each other to make themselves feel better. And I just had to learn to set up boundaries. It's important to know how to do that. Because I've tried teaching them, but they don't want it. I've tried teaching them, but if I did it with words, they just kept coming anyway. So I did it with silence. And that works. Because if you don't talk to them, yeah, you don't make it easy for them to open the conversation. Because the problem I realized was that if I go and talk to people, they think I talk to them because I need help. It's like a freebie, right? I go to you, I give you all this stuff, my time, my energy, my love, my attention. And then you think, oh, I must be very special. And then you start like, oh yeah, yeah. And then you feel really cool. But if I don't do that, I can sense how they all are. They're like agitated and angry. And if I go and talk to them, I open myself to that anger. I don't want it. Because this is what we say, you know, what we call repressed anger. You know, people talk to you and their anger is just like right in your face. They say, oh, how nice. You go and tell people, yeah, I have a YouTube channel now and, you know, I've got like 600 videos on there. It's crazy. You know, I really love what I'm doing. I really love making music and then people say, oh yeah, good for you. And that's people that say that they're your friend, right? That's people that say they're your family. You go to them and you talk to them about how much you like making content, and they know they have a flight drone that they don't use. So sometimes I like to rub it in their face a little. That they have nothing to show for themselves, because they actually never do what they like. I find that liberating. But I also realize if I do that a lot, people get really angry with me because then they start projecting all their anger onto me. I don't really want that. Because I say, you know, that's what I realized from people that gave ceremonies with ayahuasca. They had people come because they wanted the money, 100 euros per ceremony, and then they accepted people that were like in a very bad place. And these people, they just took a piss on their home. Instead, you should have only taught the people that really wanted to do the work. That's what I say. Like, somebody who doesn't really want it doesn't get anything. So if you're too proud to listen to what I have to say, you're not willing to put in the work. And if you think I've got nothing to teach you, well then teach yourself. And if you think I've got nothing to teach you because you think you know it all already, well then show me that you know it. Because if you know it, then it shouldn't be a problem for you to also live it, right? Because I cannot claim, you know, I know certain things, but I'm not living all of it. But I'm trying to get there, right? So I'm working all the time on this. Also on my mentality towards other people, right? It's just like at the moment I'd rather sit here and do this than to be out there being screamed at. And now I really want to go shopping. But what would I buy? I would probably buy more coffee. And probably would buy more rice. Because that's what I feel like I need at the moment, right? It's like very strange. But if that's what it is, right? And the nice thing is if you go to some of these Turkish shops, you can buy really big packages. And you can also buy coffee with cardamom already in it. That's a benefit. It is better to just add it yourself, of course. But yeah. So I don't really know at the moment. Actually, I don't want to keep drinking coffee. I want to feel different. And one reason that makes me feel bad is coffee. Because it drains me. And it also is probably the source of why I eat so much. Anyway, for better or worse, let's stop.